You are. So you know what I just said is about you, but given that the word was bleeped out, you don't know what it was. What's going to determine how you feel about it? Well, firstly, obviously, was it positive or negative? If it was positive, you're beautiful, you'd feel a lot better than you're ugly, a negative. That's pretty intuitive. But there's one more huge concern that's going to have a huge impact on how you feel about it. And that is it something that's inherently about you, or is it something you've chosen? Is it something permanent or something temporary? Let me explain what I mean, and let me explain how this distinction can have a huge impact on how attractive you are to women. And I'm gonna give you concrete examples in this video of exactly how and why and how to use this to become more attractive. So to reiterate, in this video, we're gonna talk about a critical but overlooked aspect of understanding human nature, and that is what are your inherent, immutable, unchangeable characteristics versus what can you choose, what changes, and why does it matter in game. And let me start off with an example. As far as a woman is concerned, your value as a man is inherent. The comfort she has with you is chosen. And here is what I mean. The traits that she will associate with high value, being tall, being handsome, being rich, being charismatic, are seen as immutable things. You are that thing. The thing she sees as giving comfort, you are sensitive, you are kind, you are dependable. These are choices. Any person can be kind if they care enough. They may be faking it, but they can be kind to another person. Any person can be responsible if there's enough pressure on them to do so. And so you see, when the girl views you, she sees you as a person that it is of high or low value immutably, who is choosing or not choosing to create comfort with her. Now, as people who have learned game, we know that this is actually not quite true. It is possible to learn to be more high value. It is possible to learn to be more charismatic. So I can be more charismatic a week from now than I was last week, or a year from now than I was last year, for sure. It is possible to learn game. However, it is true that at any moment in your game journey, your charisma is fixed. You can't have more charisma than you've learned to have. You can't have the game that you would have next year, this year, because you haven't learned it yet. So in that sense, it is a permanent or inherent characteristic, at least for her current experience of you. But in any case, the girl is perceiving that your value is an inherent characteristic and your comfort is a chosen characteristic. And here is why it matters. In game, there's this distinction between a lover type strategy for mating and a provider type strategy for mating. And the girl is looking for different things from them. From a guy she's seeing in the lover category, she is just looking for the best possible genes. She is saying, I'm willing to sleep with this guy even if he's sleeping with other women because I think his genetics are so good, I want those genes. With a guy she's seeing in the provider category, she's thinking, I want to sleep with this guy because if I have kids with him, he'll stick around and raise the children. It's not about getting the best genes. And with a guy she sees as a provider, having a one-night stand would be a genetic tragedy for her. And this kind of makes it clear why women see value as inherent and comfort as chosen. Your level of value determines would she sleep with you if she's never going to see you again. The level of comfort determines are you persuading her from a lower value position to sleep with you? And this distinction fundamentally is going to change how she views the entire relationship. I'll tell you kind of a funny anecdote about this, which is when I first moved from New York to Las Vegas and I was going out consistently in Las Vegas, at first my game style had too much comfort in it and it wasn't working in Las Vegas. And then I kept being more high value and less comfort, more playerish and less sincere in my game, till I got to a point where my game was absolutely crushing it. But then I had a very strange thing happen. Up until this point, every single time I'd ever slept with a girl, she had wanted to take my number, wanted to see me again afterwards. But then I had one week where I slept with 3 different girls and none of them seemed to want to take my phone number. The first time I thought it was a curiosity. The second time I thought it was a pattern. The third time I was so curious, at the end I tried to exchange numbers with her, even though we lived in different cities, it probably wouldn't go anywhere. I said, do you want to, maybe take my number just in case? And she goes, ew, no. And it seemed like she lost attraction and she lost some of the positive experience. And I know the experience was good because she left in a taxi and we used a private taxi service. The person that drove that taxi later told me how much the girl was bragging to that taxi driver about how good I was in bed and how good her experience with me was. So I know she enjoyed the experience, but once I did a little tiny provider thing, she was turned off. She was like, ew, did I get provider dick? Ugh. This is how strong and ingrained that distinction is for women. They really honestly are seeing men as lover or provider. Now, ideally, a perfect man would be a guy who they saw as lover, saw as unattainable, and then later showed a willingness to become a provider. And we'll talk about that transition in one of the other points later in this video. So the first example of lover versus provider or value versus comfort comes down to evolution. This next example comes down even more to evolution, and this is the difference between an honest or a dishonest signal. An honest signal in evolution is something that is hard to fake. A dishonest signal is something that's easy to fake. And girls have to sort through with men what is an honest and dishonest signal to determine if this is a guy she really wants to sleep with. Let me give you an example. If I come up to a girl and have a clever pickup line, is that an honest signal? No. It is super, super, super easy to fake. I could have gotten that line from my friend. I could have spent all day coming up with it. I can just deliver it without actually being that type of guy. However, if a girl gives me a hard time, gives me a shit test, and I respond perfectly to that, that is much more honest. That is hard to fake because I couldn't premeditate that. I couldn't plan that. I couldn't see it coming in advance, and I had to respond in the moment. So the more honest signal is harder to fake, and therefore is more trusted as an accurate indicator of who you are. The most honest signals are signals that don't even come from you. Signals like social proof, how other people treat you, or signals like pre-selection, having had other girlfriends, or things like being in good shape or actually having money, things that were determined before you ever met the girl and therefore could not have been done out of an agenda of getting the girl. In any case, from a girl's perspective, and it's honestly pretty accurate from an evolutionary perspective as well, your inherent characteristics are considered honest signals. If she views it as inherent to you, she views it as honest. If she views it as chosen, she views it as dishonest and potentially manipulative. So far we've been talking about ourselves and our characteristics. Let's flip it around and talk about the girl in our next point. What can you tease on? You can tease on chosen characteristics with a lot of safety. But if you tease on inherent characteristics, you tease at your own risk. For example, you can tease a girl on doing some silly, compromising thing very easily. If you tease her on her ethnicity, that could be a problem. You can tease her on her fashion choice. If you tease her on the shape of her nose, that can be a problem. And this distinction exists for two reasons. Number one, the things that are changeable are not things she attaches her identity to so strongly, and so while it will still have an emotional impact on her, girls care very much about social validation, so any kind of negative assessment, any kind of dismissal, any kind of social disdain will have an effect on her. You don't have to worry about that. But it is something that doesn't cut so deeply that it's going to really hurt her deeply or put like a fundamental like fracture into the future relationship. Secondly, within the scope of picking up a girl within a cold approach scenario, it really helps to have a particular sort of character arc to the relationship. And that character arc is, I didn't like you at first, and then you won me over. If the thing you didn't like about her at first is changeable or silly, it's a lot easier for her to eventually win you over. If the thing you didn't like about her is something that's fundamentally true about her at the beginning of the interaction, is still true at the end, then it's a lot less plausible that she can actually win you over. For example, she can prove to you through her behavior that she is responsible and has her shit together rather than being ditzy. But she cannot prove to you that her nose looks different than it does or that she's thinner than she actually is. Next point, which is also next strategic tip for you, when determining which girls are right for you, when screening who to date, who to sleep with, who to marry, who to invest your time, energy, and attention into, it is better to focus on their inherent characteristics rather than their chosen characteristics. And that is because the chosen characteristics can vary by relationship. The same girl who will party a lot and take a lot of drugs when dating a promoter might go to the gym and have incredibly healthy habits when dating a gym rat. Or the same girl who spends money foolishly and seems irresponsible when dating a broke loser might develop really good habits when around a rich, meticulous, organized man. But certain things are immutable. How attractive she is, aside from plastic surgery, is pretty immutable. How intelligent she is fairly immutable. At least in the short run, her level of self-esteem is fairly immutable. So these are the types of characteristics that you should probably choose to screen on more so. So screening on how smart she is and how much she has her shit together is probably a more reliable indicator of who she is than on how kindly she treats you at the start of the interaction, especially because at the start of the interaction, she may not know you have value yet, and how she treats someone of value may be very different than how she treats someone who doesn't have value to her. And now to the final point, which is probably the most important and also builds on all the others. And this is one that's going to come up in every single interaction you have with a woman, and actually every single social interaction you have, even outside of man-to-woman relationships. And that is this. When conveying your biography, you should start with your inherent characteristics first and your chosen characteristics later. Because typically, people don't care about your chosen characteristics until they know your inherent characteristics. Let me give you a few examples of this. If you are trying to make it onto a sports team, and you are the slowest, smallest, most uncoordinated person on the field, that is a problem. Even if you have a really good attitude, and you're a hard worker, and you encourage your teammates, you are not making the team because you fundamentally are a liability if put onto the field. How good you are at the sport and how athletic you are is an inherent characteristic. Those other things, at least to an extent, are chosen characteristics, and so they will be considered second. If you lack the inherent characteristics, all the chosen characteristics in the world are not getting you there. Similarly, if you are applying for a job, they're going to look at your resume, make sure you have the requisite skills, and then they'll bring you in for a personality-based interview and see if you get along and you're a good fit for the company culture. But the skills are fundamental, because without those, all the culture in the world isn't getting the job done. Now let's circle back around to dating. If you are making an online dating profile, you have a certain amount of prompts or a certain amount of bio material or a certain amount of photos to convey who you are. You want to convey your inherent characteristics first. That's why you want your early photos to make you look as physically attractive as possible, because physical attractiveness is an inherent characteristic. And that's why you want your first prompts to show you as a high-value person, because that's seen as inherent. Your later prompts, once you actually establish value, can show you as having some quirkiness, some humanity, being a unique individual. Or you can have later prompts where you're with a dog showing your loving nature, or doing something social that shows you have friends. So you start with your inherent characteristics, you go to your chosen characteristics later. And that is the way that they want to experience you. That stimulates how a girl meets a high-value guy. She first finds out this is a guy she wants. This is a guy that's on a level to be relevant to her, and then finds out, oh, he's actually a cool, interesting person. Similarly, when meeting a woman live, you start off by demonstrating value before you seek comfort and connection. If you go up trying to establish comfort and connection with a girl, she'll be like, ooh, this guy's clingy, this guy's a loser, why does this guy want me so much? Ew. If instead you convey yourself as high value and unattainable, and she's like, why can't I get this guy? Oh, I kind of pierced his armor. Oh, I got him. Oh, now he sort of likes me. Oh, I'm winning him over. Oh, now I have a great connection with him. You have to establish the value first before she'll want to connect with you. In the end, relationships are all about the connection, but if you lead with the connection before you have the value, it just doesn't work. Sometimes you have to push the girl away before you can let her in. So I hope that distinction between inherent and chosen characteristics was eye-opening and interesting for you. It's something that came up for me on a recent boot camp when I was explaining game, and I realized it's such a good model, such a good metaphor for understanding everything, so I just had to share it with you. Hope it's been good for you. Let me know if you liked it. Let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if you disagree with me. Put that all in the comments. Like, subscribe, and hopefully I'll see you on the next video. Take care.